Welcome to the Adam Rothstein Hockey Podcast. This is your podcast for all things hockey. On this podcast, we talk about past history to the modern day and what you can do to grow the sport. I am your host, Adam Rothstein. All right, let's get to the show. And welcome back to the Adam Rothstein Hockey Podcast. This is episode 46, I believe. With me is Ben Coleman. Once again, how are you, Ben?
Pretty good. How you doing?
That's good. So today we are talking about youth hockey. We are going into that. We'll go into the cost. We'll go into the development stages, and I'll have something out for you guys on Substack. So please be sure to head over there and get on the email list. You need to be on the email list to get those emails. So let's get into it. All right. So we've got a large, there's many kids coming up who play rec sports, and oftentimes hockey is overlooked. And that's usually due to the cost of the game. And oftentimes you'll have a baseball, that'll be many kids' first sport, certainly in the US of A. Basketball is another good one. And football, not so much anymore because the concussions. So they'll go to soccer, or they'll even go to tennis as well, and do doubles as well. Golf, only unless you're like Rory McIlroy, and polo is something even more expensive than hockey. So I'll say this. When you're searching for equipment, definitely go to some charity drives and get your equipment from there. And also, I say start with a wooden stick for your kid. That way, when they do develop and get better hands or quicker hands, it'll be much more easier for them in the long run. Okay, so how do we get started? Well, I'll turn it over to Ben. And Ben, what does it take? What does a youth kid need to do to get started, or what do the parents need to do to get started?
Yeah. So I think it depends. Personally, I've always seen these two competing views. You have to start your kids so really quickly because when they're really, really, really young, you want them to be this huge star. And at the same time, start your kid if and when they want to play. I've never really been a proponent of people who are like, well, I guess to a certain extent I get it in some way, but I'm not really a proponent of people who say, I want my kid to be an NHLer, so I'm gonna give them every single opportunity they possibly can. You get where I'm going at this, right? Like
Okay, let me break this down. So many parents will begin with their child at like 4 years old, like might sound nice and all that stuff. And because they want them to be a star, they want them to go to a D1 school or something and get on a 4-year scholarship. But that's not the case for most kids. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I'm also saying that on top of that, is that what the kid wants? Or is that the parents' interest? So I think we sometimes have to ask ourselves that, and I think later we'll get a little bit into parent spectators and treatment of referees in youth games, and I think some of that's also gonna combined in there a little bit. I just caution parents a little bit to let your kid decide, because you're not to this goes for any sport. I'm not a parent, but I feel like the best way to go with any sport is to let your kid decide and let his or her interest and amount and desire to do a certain extent, whether it's go to a ton of practices and a ton of skating, or they want to take a year off from the sport. I think, like personally, me, I took a couple of years off from hockey between elementary school, my first year of middle school, like last year or two of elementary school, and my first year of middle school, because it kind of dropped off my interest. But now I played 3 years in high school, out there skating and playing when I have the opportunity to do so. I never wanted to be an NHL player. I think I knew that. I think at the end of the day, bottom line is, as you said, Adam, most kids are not going to be NHL players. So I think you got to let them have fun and see where it's going to go from there.
Of course.
Because I don't think you can stress out someone to get them to the NHL.
And multiply 25 by 32 for me, and that's like 600 whatever. And it's ridiculous that, like, in a country or like, and I guess you would consider part of Europe as well. So in the nearly 2 billion people, or anywhere where they would play ice hockey, in the nearly 2 billion or so people that would be a part of this, that could possibly play in the NHL or would have that interest, or even with the billion fans or so, it's not likely that you're gonna be one of the like 600 whatever people as well. And even if you wanted to be a ref in the NHL, that's like 4 times 32. That's 64. 60,
give or take a couple. So I think they have like a spare ref in case someone gets hurt, at least in the NHL.
I mean, like, okay, so you're looking at maybe 150 people at most, or like 4 times 32 is okay. So 32 plus 32 is 64, plus another 32 is 96. We'll just say 150 people. Let's just round off and say that. So that's 700, that maybe at the very most 800 positions, depending on where you are in the AHL, that you could possibly play in an NHL game. I'm not even talking about like a career of years. It's not likely. Now I'm not against you working hard and striving for your dream, but recognize that there are some things that are more likely to happen. I mean, you're more likely to be a doctor as well and pay off your debt, mind you, within 5 years of working as well, than you are to become an NHL player. That's a little bit more interesting to me, if you asked me.
Right. And I'd add on top of that, I think, a couple things. One is, going back to, you want your kid to be having fun. Well, I think one thing you'll notice if you take a step back from the competitiveness of the NHL and even the AHL and others, I guess technically still pro, they enjoy what they do. They're having fun with it. Now, I don't think there's nothing wrong with exposing your kid to any given sport when they're really young before they decide to play. I went to a bunch of Caps games. I took basic skating lessons. But I think what made me enjoy the sport as much as I did is because the decisions I made and the way I influenced how I played and how my teammates played and how I and my teammates treated referees, as I'll get into that in a little bit. Even I'll confess, I had my moments. I think we all do, but I think as a general rule, the player should 100%, the kid that's playing should 100% dictate what direction they want to go in, how much they want to play. And if at some point in their life they decide, I don't want to play hockey anymore, I want to try lacrosse or soccer, then that having fun is what's most important. I think you ask any coach at any level, and they'll tell you that. So I feel like we can't be losing sight of that, and definitely not at our kids' expense or at the referee's expense.
100%. And even still with our high school coach, Abraham, and for you had Ivers as well for both JV and varsity after I left. Like even still, he was about having fun. And we enjoyed JV too. And I think, you know, it also makes more sense when you're all on the same level. You know, Zach Arden, which I had on the podcast, was the best player to come out of the MCPS system as well. So I think that also is a bit of a turnoff when you're getting into high school. Now, I think you'll agree with me on this. Parents shouldn't sign up their kids up for AAA Pee Wee or like whatever the Pee Wee level is, or even some bantams, like when they get a little older, that or any U14 teen teams. I can't speak today. Like AAA, when they know they're not going to be ready for it, and maybe they'll make it, but they won't get a lot of playing time. I don't think that serves anyone well.
I think again, I've never been one to evaluate talent, at least as a third party, but I'll never be a scout in my life. Anyway, I think I think this goes back a little bit to working with your, knowing your kid's level, not to push your kid further than what they're ready for. And at different ages, different people of different skill sets, I think putting your kid where they fit is the best move. And I think on top of that, it may not hurt to put a little bit more flexibility in some of these age groups, for the reason I think sometimes our levels get a little bit too stricter with that. But
I'm not. Oh, sorry. Did you say? Did you want me to
no, I
that
just
up?
think that sometimes have bantam levels. I've never been great at keeping track of what the hierarchy is. But anyway, I think that that system needs to do a slightly better job at recognizing that really different levels, like even 4-5 year difference, the player's talent could be very, very different. And I think we need to accommodate for that beyond age level.
Of course.
That's
and
just my take.
Of course. But you also can't have anyone like, over 7 years, like just really tearing it up out there and just dominating that when they need to be.
There's a limit. Yeah, there's a limit.
I think 3 years is a good limit. Just keep it like a 3-year age bracket. That'll be fine. For the most part. I think that's good. For high school, I know it can be up to 4 years total, and you can even have a 13-year-old in there and an 18-year-old as well, because there are definitely some exceptions to that as well. So yes, potentially you can have an 18-year-old and a 13-year-old on the ice. I get
and also
that.
high school, like I mean, no, with grade school, like they have those birthday brackets. Your birthday's at one time of the year. You don't have to skip a year or whatever. Maybe again, I'm not the school board. I don't know exactly what those like how far those birthdays are, but as you know, you have kids going into high school on the really young end or on the older end, and obviously that's going to impact the age level too, which definitely I think that is a benefit of when you have varsity and JV to account for that, but also you could have a great 13, 14-year-old player who's all over either at the same level or even better than an 18-year-old. So I think can't lose sight of that, and definitely shouldn't be doing JV and varsity by age. I think we always need to look at talent.
Yeah. Now I was a senior and I dominated JV. I got my first goal there, and but you had travel players in JV as well too,
Yeah.
and I think Churchill, and you had Wooten too, and Whitman, and even BCC too, of what we went through as well. Now I think now we need to get back to a little bit of the youngers side of this, um, as well. The coaches, I don't think don't push them too hard. There's not any reason they're not going to go pro. You may have a kid or two that dominates on the ice and makes it and goes viral on YouTube doing some trick shots, you know. But guess what? You're not going to be following them, for their entire years because you didn't go through what an NHLer went through as well. So you also need to know when to let go and let go as a parent too, which I mean, like, you have to let your child find him or herself in the long run.
Yeah, I think the and definitely parents have expectations. I think just like they have expectations for, yeah, I'm not a parent, maybe one day, but so I'll do my best with this, but feel like when a parent's expectations for their kid to succeed in a sport drives their kids' activities and future and time, I think it gets problematic. And it's kind of, again, to go back to what I was saying earlier, it should be driven by how much the kid enjoys it, how much do they enjoy going through all those practices and playing the games. And chances are they're not going to be Division I hockey. They're not even if they are, they're probably not going to make it in the NHL. So let them play, let them practice. Also, let the coaches do their thing because they probably have more, not to be mean or anything, but they probably have plenty more experience coaching than you do.
Of
And while
course.
parent,
Of course.
I'm sure the parent wants to help their child all they can. As you kind of alluded to, there are times to let go. And I think for some parents, for some spectators, or even like classmates for a high school hockey game, I think it can be a little bit tough when things get exciting when you get into the game to let the players do the players, let the coaches do their job, and let the refs do it and not be able to have the same influence that they may have with their kids in a positive nature and other parts of their lives. So I think we just need to let people enjoy the sport and
Of
everyone
course.
have fun and do it responsibly.
All right, I'm gonna pull this up here and hopefully you can see my screen. Uh and and I want everyone to know where ice hockey stands on this. In terms of the percentage change, we're going to take a look at kids in the in this. So it's kind of interesting as well. So I got this graphic up here as well. All right. So okay, yeah, give it a minute. It's still loading. Okay, good. We're in business. Okay. All right. You see this, Ben?
Yep, good.
Perfect. Okay, so maybe I'll move this along here. And all right, the so apparently basketball right here had 4 million kids, and I believe this is all US based stuff. Yeah, it's US based as well. That yeah, so you had baseball at 3 million uh kids in 2021. 3.6 million participate in that on a regular basis. So I guess number of days varies by sport. 4 million for basketball, 4 million. And that was that's the sport that most kids want to play. Now bicycling as an individual sport got up there, but I guess whether that's organized or not, it doesn't say, but that's definitely interesting. Cheerleading is in there as well. Flag football is at 1 million, and I think that's just parents being more cautious. Tackle football is at 600,000.
Especially in this day and age.
What?
Especially in this day and age, not to get off the topic of hockey, but
Yeah.
definitely seen something that I can imagine concerns some parents.
Golf ranks is 1.5 million. Gymnastics, I did that for a little while, but we didn't. It wasn't anything big, and I was only like I think the last time I did that I was 5 years old, so I don't think I'd come in here. So that was 881,000. Uh, Ice hockey is down here, and the only one that and there's only two others that come below it, which is lacrosse and wrestling. Oddly enough, wrestling as a youth sport, which I mean, you think, oh no, you'll just go on the high school team and you'll just start there, which many people do. But that not to get off topic. Ice hockey does not have this does not have a culture. We're not culturally ingrained the same way basketball is, the same way football is. Um, I mean, I mean, as a sport, it is forgotten. It does tend to be forgotten as well. Now, okay, this was 6 to 12. Maybe we should take a look at 13 to 17.
17.
Still 241,660, and we're gonna go back. So guess what? All that says is that it drops off as well. It just drops off because many kids just don't have it anymore. I mean, think about it. Youth sports, you don't have to invest a lot of money in this, but I mean, like, let your child have fun too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Now coming back to leaving the sport, how many I think well, after you get to your 18th birthday, how many of the teammates that we played with are still playing this game? How many do you know? Like,
Trying to think how many I know that played in college.
well, or how many just even continued with a beer league or did something with it as well? Because I can think of a lot of people that just certainly after college, there were people that stopped playing. But even after high school, I think I might have been the only one out of my class to play college hockey.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank-
just the WJ class to play college hockey out of the entire school of 2000 for that time, or like out of the 2000 kids, I was the only one next year to play in 2013. Go on.
Yeah. I think, well, first of all, how many people do I remember even regarding like beer league stuff? I only follow a few of our former team members in social media, so I couldn't really tell you too accurately. Now in regards to your other point about college, like actually playing specifically college hockey, um, I I think it's interesting, but also I think it might be a little bit tough to know. At least, again, I don't follow too many of our former teammates. I think, at least as far as people around here, or those our classmates who went to college around here, Maryland, probably are not many, because there aren't any Division I schools, or at least not many nearby.
Well,
Like
I'm not
Maryland is
even
Division
considering
two and
Division One. I'm
three.
considering
Yeah, yeah,
ECHA under the entire umbrella, whether that's D2 or three club as well, and
okay,
and not even NCAA, just even the club hockey. What were they doing? Which is like,
yeah.
I still don't think there were many
Okay.
people.
No,
By the
probably
way,
not. Probably not
sorry, go
many.
ahead.
Although I just, I guess what I was getting at is if some of the better players did in fact go play D1, I don't know whether or not they did. There are some that probably could have potentially made it to D1, maybe not as first line guys, but it definitely wouldn't have been someone I know to stay around this area, because I feel like probably the closest D1 school to where we are is Penn State, maybe. I mean, there's
And
aren't any D1s in Maryland or Virginia or DC, just D2 and 3.
yeah,
So,
well, that's another thing too. I mean, I think it's like, you see that because they're not under the NCAA umbrella, maybe parents just don't enroll them into ice hockey, even though they may be good at it. They want the scholarship. I mean, we're pushed to do sports to get on a scholarship, get some financial support or something, or like just write essays talking about your experience, which actually, yes, I got a scholarship from doing that. So, but it's not worth it too. Um, Now, chances are you're not, unless you go to a school that's under the ECHA umbrella or whatever you're doing in the Central Coast, or like the West Coast, the Central time zone, the Midwest time zone, or I'm sorry, the Mountain time zone, or the Pacific uh standard time zone. You know, unless you're under a club umbrella or you've made it to the NCAA, you're not going to have. I mean, some schools don't even have a hockey team.
yeah,
Um,
many do, probably
George
too many
Mason.
do.
Sorry,
Too many
sorry.
don't. I'm sorry.
What?
I'm sorry. I feel like too many don't. Too
Too
many
many
schools
don't.
don't.
Too many
That they're
don't.
Yeah, especially out west, which sort of in a sense makes sense, because when you think of hockey, you think of cold areas. Then again, there's Arizona State, which is D1. But I feel like it would probably be good for the game if more teams that are, and for other sports, are like the Pac-12, like UCLA, other teams in California and neighboring states. I think in that sense it would probably be good for the game too, if maybe there's more D2s. Maybe there's some I don't know about, or even D1 if they can get there.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the share. Okay, so here's the thing. I do think that the NCAA, like, all right, with UCLA, they like anything that's like a really big school is probably at this point gonna even have an ice hockey club team. In fact, I'm gonna look that up
Yeah,
right now, but I'm not sharing the
yeah, I'd hope
screen.
so.
Yeah,
I wonder
I
how
mean
many schools do have one nationwide
UCLA
compared to the number
club
of total.
club ice hockey. I'm like just googling that. It was not even the first um search there, but apparently they do have a men's ice hockey team. There was a women's ice hockey team in Towson, but guess what? You you you're not going to guess what happened. Or you know what? Take a guess, Ben.
I'm not good at guessing. I don't know. You have to tell me.
Okay, they folded because of club fees and everything as well, and they had about maybe 10 women as well. And I'm not even sure they had a goalie when they were ready. So when they had to fold and not participate as well. I'm even going to look this up with UCLA and even just
Yeah,
say,
that was just a
and I'll
random
just do
school.
women and actually just do women's ice.
Yeah.
Uh, geez, I'm not even seeing. Uh, yeah, they're pretty much the only club team in the Southern California. UCLA apparently must be the well. I'm at it right now, and I'm like seeing that. Oh, it's the only ice hockey um as well. And then they had like, and then some girls like still try and go on the men's team because like there's nothing, there's really. But if you've seen the college games, like it is hard. Like it is like a huge step up because you're dealing with AAA guys that were some that just came out of juniors as well. And it's not easy so to deal with. Um Now I guess for the girls in their youth, I mean, there's no checking and there's no checking in youth for the entire time.
Yeah, or in
And
college. I don't
what?
think there's any. I don't think there's. I mean, I
Yeah,
could be wrong, but I'm not sure any level.
not for the women, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
even for the boys, like up until you're like 14 hour, like or past 12. And correct me if I'm wrong here. There's no checking for them either. Like
Yeah, I know there was definitely an age limit where you had to get before they permitted checking.
or a certain level as well. And I think
Right,
that's
right, right.
still good for the game as well. And then once the hitting, starts, it's a little different. And I do think I don't think you're seeing much of yet. Like, and that is another thing too, is the concussion aspect as well, which is probably turning off parents as well. There's still more concussions in youth tackle football than there is with ice hockey, and there's still, and that's just a misconception. Um, Now I do want everyone to know that it that there's still more concussions there and as well, but I mean the hits are can be harder with it. If you're looking at the NHL to the NFL, the hits are harder, but they're not hitting the head. It's just that they're using the boards as well, and I think that's kind of going to have more of an impact on the body than a simple tackle as well.
Right. I
Um,
actually, yeah, I'd add a couple things to that. I mean, well, one, I think in regards to hits and what we can, some of the stuff we could potentially do about that. One opinion I have is before you ever teach a hockey player to check someone, they should be taught the ways to absorb a check. I like I don't remember if we did this. We might have had something where we had a coach or some like pad that like pushed you into the wall and you were taught to, put your body up or your arms up or do what you have to do to make sure that your head and your neck is not the first thing that hits the boards. Do that over and over and over again before you let anybody check another player. I think that's one thing that we can do better.
Of course. And I say, well, you can still work on that before they're ready to go to the next level.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
think
Even or if before that, before you're even in a checking league, that way you don't have, that way your deadline isn't the first game.
yeah, and well, I mean your deadline essentially is going to be the first game
Right.
of whatever the next of when they get to the U14s when
Right.
they get
That's why I was saying you start teaching that before they get to the level where you can, while they're still on the no check level. So you don't have, so it doesn't have to be first game that you're getting checked into the board and you don't know what to do, or you had one practice being taught what to do.
yeah, and I say like work on the battles on the boards too for coaches. Like the battle begins, and you're going to be taking the hits as well, and it's not gonna be. I mean, like they'll struggle a bit. I mean, you don't have to put too much force on them, but give it enough so they get the concept down.
Yeah.
So that's a shout out to the coaches. Oh yeah. So let's get into your favorite part. Parents, referees, and fighting.
Yeah. So I think a big thing that is parents and just referees in general. I think you have to hit on all of this. So we'll start with let's see, what should we start with? One, just generally with referees. This seems to be a trend in a lot of sports. It's been going back to, we really have to preface this on, most of your kids, the vast majority of them, are not going to the NHL. And even those who may have a shot, a high school hockey game or middle school hockey game is not the deciding factor. So this is not the time to be screaming at the refs. And on top of that, frankly, if you're counting on the ref to be the deciding factor of whether or not your kid's going to go to the next level, then you're not where you need to be. I think that's something that gets missed in a lot of the articles that discuss this. They say, oh, the parents, your kid's not being scouted right now, so you shouldn't be yelling at the ref. No, one, yeah, you shouldn't be yelling at the ref. But two, the ref is not the deciding factor here. It's so whether the other player gets a penalty or not, and your team gets a power play or not, and your kid's on the first power play, still you may score a goal on the power play. That's not the deciding factor. The quadrillion other things that scouts, which in most of these cases aren't even present, would look for, and it's one power player, two power play goals is not going to sell them. So to blame everything on the referee and start cussing them out, one, that's an issue itself. And this pattern we've seen is, yeah, fewer referees it seems like it's turning away potential referees, which is horrible for the game.
Of course. And I put something in the chat for you. Don't forget about the injuries too. I mean,
Yeah.
even at 10 years old, yes, your child can get injured. And yes, even with the curved glass and everything, there could be a mishap on the boards. I didn't say this in the last episode, but I was reffing a beer league game like for practice, and oh my god, it is not for me. There was a blade of the stick that got caught in my skate, like where that hole is. But I mean, like, and I was hooked, and I was like trying to get off, like dude, get it off, like a spider was on my foot or something. But it was a terrible thing, and I couldn't blow the whistle and call anything on him. And also, this was more of a scrimmage than anything else because I mean I was calling off sides, and then they're like, oh, okay, you got to tone it down. We got to get these guys ice time, but yet they're taking 5-minute shifts. It's like, dude, honestly, I mean, maybe I just had a salty taste in my mouth with the beer league, but to the parents, the 16-year-old that's reffing your mites game, your kid's mites game, or your peewee game, let him make his money. Let him do what, let him learn the hand signals as well. And do you really think you're that tough? Like, to any parent that thinks that it's okay to yell at a 16-year-old and curse him out and call his mother the C word,
And that's, yeah, it's
you can please, you know what, leave this podcast and go rethink your life. So I'll do like the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing. Like you don't want to sell me death sticks. You want to go home and rethink your life. And then you should repeat back to yourself, I want to go home and rethink my life. Like that's what you want to.
yeah. All right.
Yeah, all right. That's what you should do, parents. Go home and rethink your life if you think that's justifiable to any 16-year-old kid, because we need the referees as well. And to any teenager, yeah, you can be making up to $45 a game, which is pretty good. So I mean, like, and if you do that for three, you're looking at 90 plus. Yeah, you're looking at potentially about $135 per day if you do that for 3 games as well. And that's pretty good for most Americans, but you're not going to have time because you're going to have to go to class and study and stuff. I think the youngest you can start is 13 in terms of getting certified. So, but you're going to be sticking with the mites. You're not going to be doing anything beyond that. And I think once you gain like a couple years experience, then you go on to the peewees and such. And unless you're lucky, will you actually get to go and ref in the NHL? But you're probably not going to do that. But it's a great part-time gig, by the way, if you can actually handle that stress. But at least I tried it, and it's not for me. Certainly not beer league as well. And I think I got too much input on that as well. But who knows? Maybe I'll come back to it. What are you thinking?
Yeah. So before we go back to treatment of referees, because that's the point I really love to press on, I think to put the injuries and the referees thing together, looking back to when we were in high school, when there was a hit from behind, it would be, the penalty was, it seems, in the grand scheme of things, it seemed insufficient. It was like the one player got a 10-2. I mean, the player has to sit for 12 minutes, and you get like the other team gets a 2-minute power play. It's like, I'm not sure how that teaches anybody a lesson, or is the deterrent for one of those guys, for the penalized player's teammate. I don't see how that's a deterrent. If you're saying your team's only have to kill 2 minutes and you lose, and this guy's just going to sit there for 12.
Or essentially,
I think officiating in our leagues need to do better. In my opinion, hits from behind should be a 5-minute penalty, automatic game misconduct, and potentially, depending on the nature of it, a 1-game suspension. It has to stop, and it has to stop at a young age.
Really, 5? Because I think that, I mean,
the 1 minute. I mean, the
from
2-minute
behind. I mean, you also need to take
ridiculous.
a look at.
It wasn't enough.
Really, because I mean, like, we were, it's interference for the most part. Like that's when they would call it, and that's still 2 minutes. But it's like, if it's not a big hit, I mean, anything that, like, I mean, if it's like, if you ram someone into the glass boards, then yeah, I guess game misconduct as well. But you want to know something else? It's a random player that sits in the box. It was me. It was not the captain.
Oh, I had to do it once. So yeah.
Two. So if anyone has a major penalty and then a minor penalty, you sit the captain. Of course, you sit the captain of all people.
Yeah. Well, what I was, I guess, getting at similar. So it would be the player gets a game misconduct, and someone, it should be, and it should not be the coach's choice, and just puts their player that plays the least amount of time and has the fewest amount of points, just puts them in the box for X amount of time. One doesn't make a huge difference. If the power play is only 2 minutes, that's no different. And it's not a whole lot of a deterrent when you have 18, 19 other players on the bench. I think we need to make it very clear from a much younger age that hitting people from behind, hitting them so their necks or their heads go into the boards is not acceptable. And maybe if we really use that deterrent at a younger age, we can minimize the amount of concussions and other and related injuries that we get as the levels go higher and higher to college and AHL and NHL. It's a hope. I don't know how effective it'll be, but I'd like to think that if people think, oh, I'm not going to hurt my team that much and I'll just sit in the box for 12 minutes, I really don't feel like that's enough.
And especially when you're in 15-minute periods and you get 3 of them, you've eaten up a third of the game of when, at least when you're not going to be on the ice, and you need to be out there for at least 18 minutes potentially.
You're on the PK for a third. You're on the PK for a third, and then you lost that player for good. In my opinion,
if it's a 10-minute major, then I guess it would still go to 5-on-5.
I do a 5-minute major, and then on top of that, the person that hits the guy from behind is assessed a 5-minute major and is kicked out of the game. And then someone has to serve that 5-minute major.
Okay, let me get this right. And then all right. So let's say the captain gets this. Then if the captain gets thrown out of the game, then I would suppose the assistant captain has to get in there. But which one do you take? And in that scenario, and who even determines that? Do they just go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or then at that point, I guess the coach would get to pick that, or they just point to one of the assistant captains, like, you get in there, sort of thing, and then as well.
Yeah, it's better. Well, I think chances are assistant captain's probably not the one getting 3 shifts a game.
3 shifts? I mean, of course not.
If your assistant captain's probably to be playing more, so it sends a message even if it's your assistant captain, it's going to have to sit for a third of the period or a quarter of the period. That we're not going to tolerate this.
That would teach.
I'm not sure there's a better way, because a 2-minute power play, which is the same as a tripping call, plus the only difference is you lose a guy for an extra 10 minutes.
That would teach some youth at a very early age too. But I don't want to just kick them out. I mean, they need to be out on the ice and developing their skills, and we just need to assess what they do. And each penalty is going to be served. It's going to have its different call and a different result. And also, I mean, like no 10 or 11-year-old is intentionally gonna like throw a player over his bench and just try and take the puck, and it's like, okay, I mean, if a 10-year-old manages to do that, kick him out of the game, of course, but I mean, that's not going to happen. So I think still, you, even as a ref, you have to go lenient on them and just sometimes give them some leeway as well. But
I'm not so worried about a 10-year-old. But right the season, you start with the checking with 14, 15, and especially at the younger age, if it's just if it's really not incredibly egregious and there's no head or neck contact, and the person for the most part turns out to be okay. Now I feel like anytime there's a potential head, neck, spine, first the player needs to be taken out and evaluated, period, end of story.
Yeah, then you
But
remove that player from the game.
exactly. If there's
Okay,
something
all right.
something like that, you remove the player. If it's clearly a hit from behind that they just tumble on the boards and stop themselves or whatever it may be, probably just do a 5 and 10. So instead of there's still the 5 minutes because you have to make a point. But instead of a game misconduct, it's just a 10 minutes. So it sits for 15 instead of being completely gone. So it still sends a message. You lost a player for 15 minutes, so either an entire period or 3/4 of a period, and you have to defend a long penalty kill.
Well, no,
But
wouldn't that
depending on
just
how
be
egregious it is,
wouldn't it
I
just be
think.
10 minutes and then part of the 5 minutes would just be served during the 10 minutes?
Well, it depends if you're doing a 5 and 5 or a 10 and 5. Like, depends if I guess it depends on whether you're assessing the misconduct on top of the boarding, like on top of the boarding for the hit from behind. You're assessing as 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
Okay, so
And
that
maybe that
makes
could also depend on the severity. Like if it's not much, but it's still a hit from behind. If it's somewhere in between, that's 5. If it's somewhere in between, it's 10, and then it's game. If it crosses the line or someone's neck or head's going into the boards, and it was clearly reckless or intentional.
all right. We have to finish this up here so I can get a good night's rest. Training. You can get injured during training, and so be sure to stretch well and don't do anything stupid like kick a couch in your basement when you're 16 years old. Please don't do that because you could have a knee injury. So don't do that, and also definitely stretch like I said before, exercise, go running to stay in shape as well.
Yeah. I'd also want to point something about training, because this is something that actually happened to me, is, well, sort of, is you really need to understand that, well, obviously it's just off ice, but what's also important to remember is you don't have to be in a game or even in a practice to be subject to a serious injury. Example, I was on a stick and puck and I got hit from behind. Apparently it was from one of Kevin's old teammates. And like I literally just got hit from behind and fell on my head. I was just standing stick handling on the blue line. So you really need to understand that you're never immune to injury of any kind, and you really need to be careful. I ended up with a concussion. I didn't know I had one for about an hour until I saw a stop sign here and a stop sign here. So whenever in doubt of a potential injury, or you fall on your head and you don't know, get off the ice. It's better to miss a week, a month, however long it takes you to recover from a concussion than get a second one. And I'm not a doctor, but when I understand that it's going to get a heck of a lot worse if you ignore injuries. And off-ice injuries, you hurt your foot, you roll your ankle. You need to take this stuff seriously. You may have, like, you're not going to be able to play the next game well, and you're not going to get better if you're continuously playing on injuries and hurting them over and over and over again. So I think I like the motivation. I support the motivation to keep playing, keep practicing, getting better, but take care of yourselves. So,
of course. And do some yoga as well. I think that'll certainly prevent some injuries as well, certainly with muscle tendons. We got to finish up here. Anything else you want to add before I close out this segment?
I just wanted to add that, I don't know, just kind of prior to this, I was thinking back of high school and really some of the high school and really ice rink, some of the incidents we had in high school where we have spectators throwing stuff on the ice and using laser pointers or having fights in the stands. And it's just, enough is enough. You're not helping the sport, Frank. You're not helping the situation. You're not you're doing the other fans a disservice, and frankly, you're making the players, the team, and the sport look bad. People should be in the spectator seats enjoying the game, and getting yourself arrested or disrupting the game. It makes everybody look bad. It makes the sport of hockey look bad.
Of course.
My last message is don't do it.
Maybe we'll talk about the culture problem of hockey in the next episode. All right, everyone. This has been the 46th episode of the Adam Rothstein Hockey Podcast. If you like this, please head over to Substack. You can sign up for free or become a paid member. For $5 a month, you get access to special bonus episodes, written content, and video. And I also put out some free content as well, once or twice a week. But if you want that sweet bonus stuff, you need that it's just $5 a month. Give up. So just buy a sandwich or just buy the chips for your lunch, and or just skip lunch. Is all right. That's terrible. That's just terrible, Randy. $5 a month. I made it cheap for everyone so they could get access to the best newsletter, the best hockey newsletter on the internet, because it is. And if you don't believe me, sign up for $5 and see for yourself. And if you don't like it, you can cancel at any time. Oh, okay. All right. With that being said, stay safe, stay great, and I will talk to you all in the next episode of the Adam Rothstein Hockey Podcast. Peace out.